With so much to see and do in the US, travelers often don't realize that something new is being added every day. Whether it's a special event or a new attraction, you can always expect something fresh and exciting. The Shoe Tree, now, it's desolate. The world is a fascinating place where you can find interesting landmarks, such as a forest with a smiling face or an ice cream graveyard. Recently, some astonishing facts about the US have been revealed to the public. Phone booth in the desert. In a time well before smartphones and wireless internet, phone booths were scattered all across the country. Mobile phones weren't even a concept yet, so when miners installed a phone booth in the middle of the Mojave Desert in the 60s, it wasn't as crazy as most people would think today. But when the climate changed and the miners all left, the phone booth remained as a reminder of the era left behind. Today, it sits alone, miles away from the closest town. The booth is mostly in tatters with broken glass from the windows being shot out, and the overhead light being long gone. But surprisingly, nearly 30 years after its installation, in 1997, it did ring. It was a stranger with no affiliation, just some guy named Deuce that heard about the lonely booth and wanted to see if it was legit. So he called, and it rang and rang and rang, and he called again until finally a random desert dweller answered. Her name was Lorraine, and luckily, she just happened to be walking past the area. Deuce wrote about the encounter for a blog on his website, which in turn led to others also calling the phone booth just to see if someone else would pick it up. And surprisingly enough, a few people did. For a brief time, the desert phone booth became a hotspot for tourists to stop by and answer calls from strangers just looking to say hi. A man from Texas even camped out for over a month and answered over 500 calls while he was there. It unfortunately is no longer in service. Too many visitors began to wear down the fragile land until this simply wasn't a viable resting spot. Growing on a tree. Have you ever walked past a public place and seen a bike hanging around without an owner? Sometimes people leave their bikes parked in some of the weirdest spots, and you never know if they're actually going to return to pick it up. Most of the time you would expect to see a bike and a bike rack, or maybe chained to a parking meter, but in front of a tree in the forest, it turns out that someone did actually leave a bike held up against a tree for so long that it eventually became a part of the environment itself. It happened in Vashon Island in Washington, but it's still a mystery what happened. Like, how did that small bike reach the center of the tree that high up, and how long did it take for it to rise so high? But trees growing around bikes like this aren't the most uncommon thing to find. There's even been a recorded event of it happening to a motorcycle that was abandoned in the wild. One theory, which comes from an older folk tale, is that this bike belonged to a boy who left it behind to join the war, where he tragically died as a hero. A second legend describes a story where the bicycle owner left behind his mode of transportation on the island forest and simply never came back again. Wherever the truth might lie, this special bike is currently a popular tourist spot, as if it were some kind of art exhibit. Most people who attend to try to get pictures of it are just curious and wondering what exactly happened. Maybe one day they'll discover the true answer. Underground Inferno. It's amazing how quickly things can change over a single lifetime. Just a century ago, the city of Centralia in Pennsylvania was a small town bustling with shops, residents, and a commercial mining business. Almost the entire local economy ran off fuel from the coal mines, and with only 1,200 residents in the town, everyone was close-knit with one another. But looking at the town today tells a completely different story. The streets are abandoned and the buildings are long gone, replaced by graffiti stains on rubble. But what caused such a dramatic shift in such a short time? It's mostly a fire that's been burning underground for the past 50+ years. Centralia is also known as the worst and most devastating underground fire in the United States history. The mines were a foundation of life beforehand, established from the 1860s and even thrived post-World War II. It wasn't until a mysterious tragedy struck, although the origins for that tragic event still haven't become clear yet. Evidence seems to point towards the fire starting in a landfill that moved on to an abandoned mine pit. From there, the fire caught on to the coal seam below and spread further into tunnel territory. Attempts were made to put out the fire, but the Inferno was too great and grew too quickly. The fire simply consumed everything in its wake. The houses and buildings lost their foundations, smoke poured out from any openings it could find, and the ground surface reached a staggering maximum heat of 90 degrees Fahrenheit, making the whole area essentially unlivable. It still burns today as one of the 38 known active mining fires in Pennsylvania alone. Hopefully one day it gets taken care of, but for now it'll remain an impossible dream. Now let's get ready for today's cookie topic. Today we're looking at a skeleton unlike any other you've seen before, and it's bound to be causing an uproar soon. What scientists just discovered at the Grand Canyon terrified the whole world, but it seems to still be a secret, so don't tell anyone that we're looking at it. That is if you can actually figure it out. It seems to be a humanoid skull, but there are a few key differences that make it look like it could be more than human. Any guesses to what they are? For starters, it has a few too many eyes. It almost looks like a spider skull with the eyes still lodged inside instead of being dried out. But then there's the large and sharp set of teeth. Is this some kind of human insect hybrid species? The shape of the skull is also more helmet-shaped than skull-shaped, with a bit of a sharp edge jutting out near the cheekbone. It definitely looks like something out of this world, but maybe it was just tossed into the Grand Canyon by someone looking to hide it. The canyon is one of the biggest in the world after all, so it would make sense for even more surprises like this to be lurking somewhere in its many depths. Maybe these bones were only recently discovered but stashed over a decade ago. Of course, it could always be a film prop that was left behind on a rogue independent movie shoot. Really, the options are unlimited until we get a proper diagnosis on it. But what do you guys think it is? Be sure to comment with the hashtag cookie topic to let us know if you know any better than we do. Hey. Did you know that if you smash the like button, subscribe and click the notification bell, you're more likely to win the lottery? So, what are you waiting for? Smiley Face Forest. As the seasons change from summer to fall, people start coming out to national parks for a chance to appreciate the autumn season. In one special spot in Oregon, even more people have arrived to find the Smiley Face Forest. It can be found deep in the Rudolph County. It really does look like a smiling face. The secret behind the smile is actually a set of trees that were planted to stand out and look like a bright and welcoming smile. The special forest came about in 2011 when Hampton Lumber planted a combination of Douglas fir and large trees in the middle of a reforestation project. Large trees were exclusively chosen because of their conifers turning yellow each fall, making them the perfect contrast and background for the emoji, like smiling tree formation, along with the dark evergreen Douglas fir trees to provide the eyes and mouth. In total, the face reaches roughly 300 feet across, and it's presumed to stick around for locals and visitors alike to check out for at least another 30 to 50 years. If you ever see it in person, be sure to let us know if it put a smile on your face. Natural cave wonders. Ever wondered what those spiky cone-shaped rocks sticking from the ceilings of caves are? Technically they're known speleothems, but they're also commonly known as stalactites or stalagmites. What's the difference, you might ask? We're not exactly sure, but someone with a PhD in geology could probably give you a good rundown. What we do know is that the Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky is full of these one-of-a-kind formations, and some of them are definitely worth the visit. Depending on where you look will determine what type of rock formation you'll find. The wetter regions have plenty of these calcite-type formations that look like the standard stalagmite you might recognize, while the drier areas establish gypsum formations, a calcium sulfate mineral that's soluble in water. The gypsum formations are a bit nicer to look at, although they might give a bit of an eerie feeling, knowing that they're purely natural. They often look like delicate white crystals that can sometimes take on the appearance of a stringy flower. If you go ahead and take a guided tour, chances are a few of these will pop up along the way. In Mammoth Caves, however, most of them have been coated brown instead of their natural white state, because of the constant soot that comes from the many torches that passed by. You'll have to go in a lot deeper if you want to find an unfiltered crystal, but be sure to take a flashlight instead of a flame. Mystery rock wall. Whenever you see a wall of rocks, do you wonder how they ended up there? At the beach, it makes sense for the rocks to be pushed up from the bottom of the ocean to wherever the coastal waves take them. But then there's the East Bay Mysterious Rock Walls, also known as the Berkeley Mystery Walls. They make up a group of rocks fashioned into uneven sections of walls that stretch over a half-mile long in the San Francisco Bay Area of California. Certain portions can reach up to 1 meter high and 1 meter wide, but for the most part, none of the rocks have a consistent size. Some sections are simply made out of piles of small rocks, while others are a single giant sandstone. It's not really known just how long these walls have been up, but the formations have lasted long enough to start sinking into the dirt, holding them up. Different plants have even started growing over the rocks, proving that they don't seem to be all that recent or naturally made. So, what is their true purpose? The wall doesn't make a good fence, since some sections are small enough to walk over, and it definitely isn't tall enough to have been used as shelter during any ancient battles. No one even knows who exactly wanted it up in the first place. Maybe they were meant as an outgoing art project that's since been scrapped. There also are other similar crude walls that can be found in the surrounding hills, but this particular set seems to be the strangest. Maybe there's an even bigger mystery waiting to be uncovered here. But for now, no one seems willing to put forward an actual academic study on the spot. So, if you aren't spooked out by some of these shocking discoveries, would you still want to come and see what else the United States has to offer? There are a lot more mysteries than what we've covered here, but we like to hope that we've given a bit of insight to the unusual and mystifying treats of the massive country. But there's always more to look out for, so we'll keep our eyes and ears open for our next round of topics.